calling this a legacy game for Sean Clifford. So I was wondering if you would like to reflect on the legacy of Sean Clifford this week.
Boy, the Cotton Bowl win was pretty good a few years ago. That's 2019 season. I think that was one of Micah Parsons' last games, if not his last game. So there's that. But that's about all I remember from Clifford. I will say.
What is his legacy? Hey everyone, welcome into Monkey Knife Fights College Football Show, Week 3 edition. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me, as always, John McKechnie from Rotowire.com. John, what's up, bud? How you doing?
Doing good over here. You know, last weekend, the classic, none of these games look all that good on paper. And then we get like the best college football weekend, maybe that we'll get all year. I mean, upsets, close games. It had everything that you possibly could have wanted. And, you know, possibly one of the more surprising things was the Texas-Alabama game actually being a good game. Like, I think that, you know, there's video evidence of both of us thinking the other side of that one last week. And, you know, some things happened to make it a little bit more competitive. But at the same time, that living up to the hype in the early window, like really kind of set us off for a really great Saturday.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think we did mention, though, something about like the noon early kick for Bama might throw them off a little bit. I don't know if that was the reason why they looked not great Saturday. But do you think there's anyone in the country that feels worse than Texas's kicker?
Oh, boy. Yeah. I mean, missing that kick earlier on in the game really just kind of ended up costing them. And yeah, it's tough to think of a bigger goat right now. And, you know, like you would say maybe Scott Frost feels pretty bad, but like he gets like $15 million like that. So bad that Nebraska didn't even wait the requisite 3 weeks for the buyout to get cut in half. They were that done with it. So Scott Frost walking out of the Nebraska athletic department and sliding down the rail like a high school jock or something in an 80s movie was something to behold.
Yeah, I was going to save this for our 5 questions segment, but I think I'll ask it for you. I'll ask you right now. How long before Scott Frost lands at coaching rehab U at Alabama in Tuscaloosa?
Clock's ticking. I got to imagine that he's in an analyst role by the time that December rolls around and Alabama needs to start prepping for a playoff opponent, potentially a Big Ten one.
I was going to set the line at 6 months before he's in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I under on that one. I think that this one's written in the stars.
Yep, he'll be there. Very good. Opening thought for me, John. I found myself very much so enjoying watching USC Saturday night. Like they are a lot of fun to watch. Now, I was also I had a few beverages of the adult variety that day. I was at a bachelor party in South Florida, and we were watching the USC game at the bar and at our Airbnb, and I really enjoyed watching USC, especially after Notre Dame just completely crapped all over themselves against Marshall. It's just great for the sport to have USC relevant and maybe even very good.
Yeah, no, they look legit. You know, Stanford, I think that was one of the more interesting lines last week. You know, you see the way that USC plays in the opener, and it's like, how are they only 8.5-point favorites in this one? You know, maybe Stanford, mucks things up and, shows some cracks in the armor for USC, but not the case. I mean, Caleb Williams is electric, and it's not just because he went to my high school in Washington, D.C. Like it, although they obviously put him on the path towards success, but him, Addison, Mario Williams. I mean, it's just a who's who as far as skill guys in that offense. You got Travis Dye playing running back with no gloves. Real old school, gives USC some much needed toughness out there. So, I mean, they definitely have the goods on offense. We'll see if the defense can gel over the course of the season to where they can like actually stand up to some of like the true Titans in college football. But right now, I think that, outside of the top 4 where you got Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Michigan, I wouldn't be shocked if if USC could beat Clemson straight up right now. I think Michigan's super, super interesting right now. They're not quite getting enough discussion, and they have, a soft non-con schedule and everything. So we don't really know who they are yet, but USC looks like they belong in the discussion.
Yeah, Michigan's only 7 touchdown favorites again for the 3rd straight week. So let's get to that Big Ten schedule already for them. So moving on, I want to get into our 5 Furious Questions segment. And I think question 1 is the question that's the talk of the country when it comes to college football. Is Texas back?
So that's the frustrating thing is they look like they could have been. And now we're not really going to know this season, because not only is Quinn Ewers out for an extended period and they could drop another game or two in that span, but Hudson Card looked hobbled. Sark isn't really giving anything away. So this feels like it's going to be a season that's just kind of unfulfilled for Texas. Like, you could have seen the theory for them being back after the way that they kind of gave Bama everything they had, especially when Ewers was in the game. But I think, at the end of the day, how do we define back? That's a 10-win, 11-win team, a team that's in the discussion for the college football playoff, and they're not going to be there.
I think it's trending in the right direction, but you cannot be back after a loss. Sorry. Moving on. Next question. True or false? Nebraska should seriously consider bringing in Urban Meyer.
No, I know that he probably would do a good job there, and maybe Nebraska is tempted enough to, put one of the fingers down on the monkey paw and see what happens with Urban Meyer. But I think Urban is so beyond toxic and radioactive at this point, with the way things ended at Ohio State, and obviously with the way that things went in Jacksonville, to where I think that would be a PR nightmare that Nebraska can't really afford right now. I think they got to play it a little bit safer, a little bit more of like a Disney guy.
Oof, I don't know. I'm going to go true. I mean, Nebraska acts like it's still the 90s and they're relevant, but they're not. They're not relevant anymore. You want to be relevant? Bring in Urban Meyer. It's just like bringing in Rick Pitino in college basketball. Look, Iona's going to the NCAA tournament now because you bring in Rick Pitino. You know what you're getting into. So if you want to be back, bring in Urban Meyer. Next up, are you still on the Anthony Richardson hype train?
It slowed down. We lost a couple of cars. I know there's a lot going on with the railroad industry these days, but Anthony Richardson, I'm still on the train overall. He went into that game with like 100 career pass attempts. Kentucky had a great game plan, but I think that at the end of the day, Richardson really is a talented guy. So maybe we got overstimulated, I guess, for how Richardson did against Utah. But I still believe that in the end, he's going to be someone that is really tantalizing week to week.
Did you see the Kentucky corner that I think he's out for the season already called him hot dog water on Twitter?
Yeah,
he's taking that down.
I would imagine so. That just brings up the Limp Bizkit album of Days of Yore. But I wouldn't necessarily describe Richardson as hot dog water. I think he's probably a little bit better than that. And then I did also see where Kentucky had a full alligator as their team dinner the other night as well. So that's pretty savage.
I was going to ask you, what do you make of Will Levis's new diet with gator and mayo in his coffee? Yeah, he just keeps adding to it every week. It's great.
It's always something new. It's always something interesting. Yeah, I'm half expecting him to like post an Instagram or a TikTok of him like somehow dipping, like finding a cup that's big enough for him to dip an actual like alligator carcass into it.
Love that. Love it. Next question, scale of 1 to 10. How concerned are you about Texas A&M?
Very. They need to upgrade the offense. Like Jimbo, his offense, and other people have made this point. It hasn't really been cutting edge since the days of Jameis Winston, and that's a long time ago now, unfortunately. So the talent's there. I think that maybe we were expecting too much from this greatest recruiting class of all time, being able to keep them in the top 6 in the playoff discussion. That's a lot to ask of a bunch of freshmen. These guys are super talented. So I think by the end of the season, they're going to look really good. But right now, they're hamstrung at quarterback. I think the offensive philosophy is weak sauce. The defense is really, really good. We'll get into that. But I think I am legitimately concerned about A&M. I think that they need to do something about their offensive coordinator and soon.
All right. And final furious question for you this week. We're 3 weeks into the college football season. Any preseason predictions or takes you wish you could take back right now?
Well, two of my bets, they're not dead yet, but I feel less good about them. And that's Utah and Baylor winning their respective conferences. Baylor, they lost a tough one. They seem to lose complete faith in Blake Shapen over the course of that game last week. I tweeted out during that game, Baylor trying to run out the clock in overtime when there's no clock is an interesting strategy. That's kind of the way that it looked like they were playing offense, is way too safe. So feel ungood about that one. I feel, Utah losing that game in the Swamp, that doesn't ruin their season. But now with USC really coming on strong, I feel less good about them winning the Pac-12. And I think maybe just kind of being under the assumption that A&M would be able to find a way to stay that competitive. I didn't see them losing to App State, of course, but I think that they are could end up falling well short of expectations once again. So this looks a little bit more like last year than it did the year before, where they make it to the Orange Bowl and they look like they're a team that's ready to take that next step.
Yeah, I'd like to take back my prediction that Boston College would be sneaky good this year.
Oh man, me too.
An absolute disaster right now. That offensive line is so bad. Jurkovic's got no time to throw. Zay Flowers is a stud. Can't wait to watch him in the NFL. I think he'll be very good on Sundays coming up for quite a few years. But Boston College, I now see why the over-under for win total was set at 6.5. I don't even know if they're going to get there.
Yeah, it's bad. Like I thought ACC was wide open enough to where they were like a decent little dark horse to put a future on, but nay.
Nope, not at all. All right, moving on. There's one, I think, big game this weekend. It's Texas A&M hosting Miami. This one's going to be a fun one, John. Texas A&M is favored by 5 points. It's a 9 p.m. Eastern time kick. Are you surprised at all that after last week, the Aggies are still favored by almost a touchdown in this one?
No, I think that they still line up extremely well or match up extremely well against Miami. And the fact that it is at home, I think there is usually something to be said about a night game at Kyle Field. So I think that this is a huge test for a Miami team that, is going to be having to go into an SEC opponent, into a 100,000 plus person stadium where it's just loud, it's crazy. And, we've seen the videos of the Aggie Yell. Those are some crazy people down there in College Station. So it's going to be a lot as far as the environment goes for Tyler Van Dyke, Miami, and so on to really get in there and escape with the victory. So I'm not overly shocked that A&M is favored in this one, but I think it's telling that it's less than a touchdown.
Would you call it a must win for Jimbo Fisher?
Well, I mean, I think that they're so locked in with him that the leash is long, but we're going to start to really hear some buyer's remorse type of articles and discourse if they do end up losing this game to Miami. They really can't afford to, but I wouldn't call this quite that must win level.
Yeah, I don't think they can buy him out just yet. I think I heard from the legendary Paul Feinbaum that they would owe him $90 million if they buy him out. So I don't think
that's a bit of a haircut.
Yeah, a little bit. You brought up Tyler Van Dyke, so let's get right into his total here on MKF. 230.5 is his more or less for passing yards. He's gone over that once, and that was last week against Southern Missouri. He threw for 261 yards, and the week before he threw for 193. So more or less for Van Dyke in College Station Saturday.
I'm going to go with more. I think I would advise our beloved viewers to wait on this one, maybe because this one might come down just a little bit. Xavier Restrepo, the number one receiver for Miami, is out indefinitely with a foot injury. So it wouldn't shock me if this comes down to 225, something like that. But I don't think that Miami's going to be able to run the ball. So I think that they are going to need to try to exploit through the air. And I think that Van Dyke, just the way this game is going to flow, I think he's going to drop back enough to where he hits the more than 230.5. Yeah,
I think the volume is going to be there for him to get to this number. So I'm going to go more as well. On the other side, you got Haynes King, maybe. Well, that's who we got on this on the lineup here on MKF. Jimbo Fisher was asked this week if Max Johnson's getting more practice, and he said everybody's getting reps. So who knows what's going to happen here with this one. But his line is also 230.5 yards, more or less, for King.
I'm going to go with less. I think that he's definitely on getting pulled watch this week. And we'll get to the Penn State situation too, because it's very, very similar. There's a lot of parallels there where there's not just Max Johnson behind Haynes King, but Connor Weigman is a 5-star freshman that I think a lot of people are hoping that can wake this offense up. I don't think King's the answer. And I think if they get off to another slow start, I would not be shocked to see him get the hook. So I'm going less than 230.5. Yeah,
I'm going less as well. Same reason. Who knows if he's going to make it through this game. So I'm going less here. The running backs, John, you got Henry Parrish and Devin Achane. What do you like on those guys?
I think that Achane, he's going to continue to rack up chunk yardage. I think that there's a distinct advantage that A&M has in the trenches. It hasn't really borne out in the numbers as far as Achane goes, but 65.5. I think it is low enough to where I'm going to take the more. He's one of the few guys in college football that I can almost expect one of those type of runs to get him most of the way to that 65.5 number on any given game. So I like Achane with the more.
Yeah, and Parrish has gone 108 and 109 yards in each of his first 2 games. What do you like out of him?
That's that was a sneaky, really good pickup in the transfer portal for Miami, because he's a nice like thunder complement to the lightning that Jalen Knighton brings. But I again, the trench advantage that I do believe that A&M has, just loaded front four. I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Parrish to hit that number. So I think he's going to need like 20 plus carries to get there. I don't think that he ends up with that type of volume. I'll go less.
All right. Final score prediction in this one.
Ooh, this is ugly. I think it's a 24-20 win for A&M.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to go 27-23, right in that same range. Miami's going to cover Saturday night.
I think so too.
I'll go that way. All right. There's one other kind of notable game this weekend, and it's Penn State at Auburn. There's been some like conspiracy theories floating around on Twitter already this week about the airport down in Auburn.
Wait, fill me
in Alabama. Like, I don't know. I think the plane got diverted. There was something on the runway. So the Penn State fans are freaking out, thinking that this is like some big grand conspiracy, because this is the first Big Ten team to ever play at Jackson Hare on Saturday night, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool stat there this weekend. Yeah, a lot of whining and arguing about the out of conference schedules on Twitter this week, but this is a pretty big game out of conference. What do you make of that whole debate that's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating little home and home. Last year the game pretty much delivered. Bo Nix going up to Happy Valley. I think that was the whiteout game for Penn State last year. That was a lot of fun. Obviously, our guy Nix is gone. He's out in Oregon. They got a big game this weekend. But Penn State, I think I've been pretty impressed with them thus far. They didn't play their best game against Purdue in that season opener. Purdue's tricky. They're going to run 80 plays a game, and Penn State was able to withhold in that one. And then, they took care of business against Ohio. No real problem there, although they kind of inadvertently stoked their own quarterback controversy with Drew Allard getting in that game later on. But I do like Penn State in this one. I just feel like Auburn is really, they've taken some steps back. I know that Jordan Hare can be a really, really tricky place for teams to play, even teams that are relatively familiar with it, like the SEC. And obviously, this is the first Big Ten team to play down there. So this could be a raucous enough environment to where Penn State gets rattled. But I think on paper, the advantage is strong enough to Penn State's side to where I will go with them.
So I want to talk about Sean Clifford here for a minute, because I saw one fan blog for Penn State. I think it's the Victory Bell Rings blog, calling this a legacy game for Sean Clifford. So I was wondering if you would like to reflect on the legacy of Sean Clifford this week.
Boy, the Cotton Bowl win was pretty good a few years ago. That's 2019 season. I think like that was one of Micah Parsons' last games, if not his last game. So there's that. But that's about all I remember from Clifford. I will say.
What is his legacy? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's just a clone of every quarterback that Penn State has had for the last 15 years. Going back, Matt McGloin, Christian Hackenberg, Trace McSorley, Sean Clifford, they're all the same guy. They're all just a generic Big Ten quarterback, about 6'2" to 6'4", about mid to like 210 to 220. They wait. They all run around a little bit. They start 3 to 4 years. It's just the same guy. I mean, what are we doing with a legacy game for Sean Clifford this weekend? A little crazy in my mind.
Every fan base has its own delusions about where it really stands in the just general pecking order of college football people's minds. Penn State is not immune to that. So of course that they have to have a take like that, after, like you said, a quarterback who's been there for seemingly forever.
So so in this legacy game, I don't think we have a lineup yet as we're recording this, but let's set it at 225.5, more or less, for Clifford.
I like the more. He's been efficient thus far this year. I like the Mumfield guy that they brought in from Akron, the receiver. Parker Washington's good. They've got some good young freshmen. Can dump it down to the running backs and they can pick up some yardage. Nick Singleton kind of arrived last week against Ohio. Obviously, Auburn will be a trickier defense to solve, but I'm going to go with the more on this one, unless Penn State goes real conservative. If the environment's crazy, which is totally possible, but I will still go with the more on that one.
Yeah, I'll go with the more. He played really well against Auburn last year, 28 of 32, 280 and 2 TDs. Yeah, I'm going to go with the more there as well. And then TJ Finley, he has not been, very good so far this season. 167 yards against San Jose State is his season high right now. So let's put his line at 160.5, more or less.
I'm going to go with, I'm going to hold my nose and go with more. I hate it. I hate backing TJ Finley. I don't think that they have much in the way of passing game weapons. But I just, if he plays 4 quarters, I think he ends up going more. But, you got to remember in that one that there's bench potential there. I think Robbie Ashford's pretty interesting as far as other options in that quarterback room.
And what do you think we get out of Tank Bigsby this weekend?
I think that we see him get held in check. I think that we see him under 90 yards is where I'm at with it. Penn State has like a top 10 defense in SP plus. I'm going to ride with that. I think the defense travels.
All right. Very good. All right. Moving on. Let's do a speed round here. We have a number of great contests on MKF this weekend. So let's start off with Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel at Nebraska, 290.5 passing yards, more or less.
I'm going to go with more. I think that Oklahoma really rubs it in. This isn't like baseball where you fire the manager midseason and suddenly you get like a nice little bump. I think that maybe it clears the stink out a little bit, but I don't think it translates to Nebraska playing all that much better, not against Oklahoma. So I'm going to go with more.
All right, let's talk about his number one receiver, Marvin Mims for Oklahoma at Nebraska, 95.5 receiving yards, more or less.
I think he's going to go with more. We've seen him with stat lines that are just like 3 catches and he can clear the more. So I'm going to go with more on this one. I think that, the target share, it kind of evaporated last year. I think it's going to continue to come back up this year. I think that we're going to see him clear this one.
All right. How about one of Oklahoma's old quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler for South Carolina, taking on that Georgia Bulldog defense this weekend, 215.5 passing yards, more or less.
I'm going to go with less. That's such a tantalizingly low number, but Spencer Rattler is bad and Georgia's defense is good. So I'm going to go with less.
All right. On the other side, Georgia's star tight end, Brock Bowers at South Carolina, 55.5 receiving yards, more or less.
We haven't really seen him, play quite to the explosive level that he did last season as a freshman, but A.D. Mitchell, doubtful to play. I think that steers a little bit more of the targets Brett Bowers' way. And we know that what he can do with the ball in his hands, running down the field after he makes a catch. So I'm going to go with more.
All right. Next up, our guy, Sean Tucker for Syracuse. They're taking on Purdue at the Carrier Dome Saturday, 110.5 rushing yards, more or less.
Yeah, this is one of the sneaky good games of the weekend as far as Power 5 intermingling is concerned. I can't bet against Sean Tucker right now. I mean, the guy is automatic. Just every single time out, you got to expect him to see a heavy workload and have awesome production along with it. So I'm going to go with more.
Yeah, he did this all last year too. I like them more there a lot. Next up, a great battle in the SEC West this weekend. Mississippi State at LSU. Will Rogers, 325.5 passing yards, more or less.
I'm taking the more. That's a high number, but you got to remember that Miss State just simply isn't interested in running the ball. So Rogers is going to be throwing it like upwards of 50, maybe even 60 times on Saturday. He's going to clear that.
All right. And on the other side, Keishawn Butte against Mississippi State at home, 60.5 receiving yards, more or less.
I know it hasn't gone great for him to start this season, but I got to go with more. I think that he gets more involved this week. He sees the 5 targets against Southern last week. That's a positive sign after the Florida State debacle. I think that he gets even more featured this time around. So I'm going to say more.
All right. And finally, NC State's quarterback, Devin Leary at Texas Tech, a very fun out-of-conference game. I think this is going to be 255.5 passing yards, more or less.
I'm going to go with more. This one is tricky, and maybe Texas Tech's defense isn't as bad as it used to be. But I think that Tech is going to stay competitive on the scoreboard long enough to where Devin Leary has to be the guy for this NC State offense. I'm going to go with more.
All right. Very good. All right, that'll do it for the speed round. John, any other matchups, games, betting lines, anything you like this weekend?
BYU versus Oregon is going to be a lot of fun. We got to see if BYU gets some of its playmakers back in the fold with either Puka Nacua or Gunnar Romney, but they're able to take care of business against what is still, in my opinion, a good Baylor team last week at home. So that one, for all you nighttime freaks out there like myself, that's going to be a fun one on Saturday night. So check that one out.
Love it. All right, that'll do it for us this week. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. And the NFL is back as well. We'll have NFL content coming out as well this weekend. Thanks, guys.